From sunny Southern California, this is the podcast from the International Broadcast Headquarters and AbelJosephson.com. Here now is your host, Abel Josephson.
In the beginning, in that Bible book, it says, let there be heaven and earth. And is the key word. Heaven and earth. That means everything that was considered earth was not allowed to be. It was not allowed to be. We all got involved in a Christianity that said you didn't have to do anything. You just had to believe that Jesus died on a cross for you. We were told that it didn't matter what we'd ever done that we thought was bad, or what we knew was bad, or what was written was bad that we violated, that Jesus didn't care about those things, that we were forgiven and we could go on now. But as soon as we started cracking open that dusty family Bible book and started attending a stick and stone, brick and mortar house of religion, all they talked about was what we had done and all the bad stuff that we should feel sorry for. And deeper, we should look around and find all the bad stuff within us and cast it out. And that's why you see all these ministries that are so driven, these, what do they call it? Deliverance ministries, where they're casting out devils and casting out a spirit of this and a spirit of that. They got a spirit behind every rock. There are forces that move in our life, and we have a will. We want it to go to what we think will be the most convenient and expedient and wonderful and blessed and fun for us. But when life takes turns and circumstances and situations that are presented to us cause us a problem, cause us a setback, discourage us that it's not part of the plan that we envision, we judge it as negative and say, well, that's the work of Satan, or devils got involved and prevented me from getting my blessing and all this other nonsense. That church starts teaching us to take part of us and part of our experience and throw it away, to deny it, to fight against it. So instead of having peace in the valley, instead of resting on the mountaintop, we spend the rest of our religious life slaying dragons all the time. These things. It says in the beginning, let us make man in our image. Us, and whoever us is, whoever we are that the Bible refers to, we or us are speaking through the whole Bible. Let us make man in our image. Allow it. Which means there were certain members of the group called us that were not allowed to speak or have an impression on the man that he would become who and what they were outwardly, with an open expression in a body, walking around so nobody could deny the existence of it. That's the only reason you have a physical body, by the way. That's the only reason there's a physical earth. That which was invisible created that which was visible, so that that which was invisible could be seen. Because once seen, something cannot be denied. Paul talked about how we have one God and Father of who? Us. One God and one Father of us all. Us is mentioned all through the Bible. And if you think it's just a figure of speech that refers to, Bible characters in a Bible that was written 7,000 years ago or whatever it was, I don't even care. You're incorrect there. Us is all the members that make up who and what you are. Now it's really interesting when you start talking about sons, because I'm going to talk about the only begotten Son. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever should believe on him. We're going to talk about that only begotten Son and how that Son had to be sacrificed. That Son, the only begotten Son, which infers the fact that there are other sons that were not put to death, that were not sacrificed. But one of more than one of a group was, just like Joseph was sacrificed. They sought to put him to death. It didn't work. Why? Because Joseph represents a voice. The voice will not go away. The voice of a person, a voice coming from a person that expresses a certain aspect of that person, cannot be put to death, cannot die. The only way that it can be put to death is to be silenced, that voice cannot speak from within you, that represents part of you, that would have the will within it, like a DNA, to speak through your mouth, to acknowledge the presence of the voice in the ears of all the other voices that are alive and are living and are actually the souls within you. Now, I talk in a little bit different language than some people talk in. I understand that. And it is the hardest thing. I've worked through these things for years. And I stopped for a while because I realized, I just stopped speaking and teaching because I realized that the words I was using that came from the Bible had totally different definitions. Totally different definitions than what really, literally, every person I ever spoke them to none of them had ever been aware of these definitions that I knew were in place behind these words. A son, what's a son? A son is an understanding that you have. All right, so when I say son, I'm talking about an understanding that came because you let a voice speak out loud from you that represented you, that spoke to you from you, so that you could work through you and get to know you. That son had a voice. That understanding had a voice. How many times did you try to explain something to somebody and you couldn't quite come up with the words that express what you needed to express? And so when you said out loud, something you thought would express it, you knew the second the words came out of your mouth, nah, that's not really it, is it? But you would have never had that understanding that what you thought was not exactly accurate. But when you hear deception or hiding in your own words about an issue concerning you, you know it when you hear it because you have many witnesses, many ears within you that hear what you say and go, no, that's not it. And how do those many ears within you know, that's not it what you say? Because within you, before that voice spoke that was hoping to represent you, has already been heard by all the ears in truth. They all understand. The difference is that this one understanding now comes out of the mouth of you, and the other ears, once it comes out of the mouth of you, it becomes known to the other ears within you as God, and they must respond to the what? Voice of God. Yes, but what I said wasn't actually accurate. It doesn't change the fact that it was delivered through the use of words or word, and the word is God. See it? So when you say something like, and this is the one I go to all the time just because it's quick and easy. You look at I look at a characteristic I have that I've had to embrace. I talk too much when I'm sitting with people or when I'm at a party or in a meeting. I talk too much. And I recognize that I do. I speak out of turn, I interrupt. Right? Over the course of life, you can look at certain attributes that you have, that you realize that you have them, but you've never been able to quite corral them. You'll never be able to quite corral them, and the fact that you are like that always will bother you until you find out where that voice is that knows the truth about what that behavior is about, and you let that voice speak through you so you can hear it. And when you hear it, and the other voices go, nah, that's not it. That's the beauty of the spoken word. If you speak something that's impure, the other ears will correct it and say, yeah, that's on the way, but it's not pure. And you'll go back and you'll find the right words or gods to express that Lord. Lord is just a knowledge that you have. So I say to myself out loud when I'm driving down the road in my car or walking through the house alone. Most of this stuff I do alone because I'm the only one that understands it, and I'm conscious and aware of that. Sometimes people will come around the corner and say, oh, I'm sorry, did you say something? And I would just tell them, no, I'm talking to myself. And it's not a joke either. I don't laugh at and sometimes I just talk to myself. You know, you've heard that old joke. If you see me talking to myself, it's because I'm consulting an expert. I always liked that one. Never poo-poo away talking to yourself. So I say to myself out loud, because I'm struggling with the fact, now I realize I talk too much and I interrupt. And I've got to deal with this. And I know now, without a doubt, and sometimes I don't want to initially, but I know the benefit of admitting it and not fighting it, but embracing it and admitting the fact I'm wired that way and I will not change. Why? That behavior was created by things that were said all through the people that lived before me, my father, grandfather, great-grandfather, blah, 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 all the way down. All of their voices and all that they said is alive within me because they cannot die. And when I die off of this earth, the voice that you're hearing now will continue on, and my children will live forever because I've spoken these things. But that's the natural father and children. And it's that way in the spirit. When I die, I will return to my ancestors. My voice and the voice that you hear will fall back into the group of who? Us. And will continue on in people after me. What I say now will come into fruit and fruition and understanding in my children years from now, probably. But I will speak through them eventually. I will live forever. Who am I? The voice that you are hearing is all that I am. The voice that you hear on this recording is all that I am. I am a living spirit, a source of energy, and the total doings and walking out and living done by this energy is expressed by a voice that the energy that I am, or life that I am, expresses with. I'm only alive, and you only know I'm alive because you hear a voice, and only the word lives forever, is the driving force behind everything that you speak, say, and do, or see, or experience. All of it. All of your judgment is produced by things that have been said before you that, you may not have been aware that was the operation, but that's the revelation in the Bible. Let us make man. There's a vast multitude, thousands and thousands and tens of thousands. You hear all those descriptions in the book of Revelation. Thousands and thousands of voices that make up the one voice that you hear right now. So I tell myself I talk too much, I do this and I do that. And there's a catch inside when I hear it. No, that's not quite it. And I will hear a knowledge speak from within me, or Lord, which is the knowledge, another voice within me who can see this matter. That urging, that knowledge wants me to first speak, no, that's not totally true that I speak too much at parties or in groups. Yes, it's true that happens, but that's not what needs to be expressed. That is not what is troubling me. And so another voice within will speak the knowledge. I will hear it inside. What I'm really doing is seeking attention so people will accept me if I express the fact that I know something they didn't know. How about that? And that's the truth. That, when heard, every ear within me says, yeah, that's the truth. Because inside of Abel, we all know the truth. And every opinion you have, every anger that you have, every thought that you have, everything that you ever want to speak about has an individual heart and voice behind it. Like a person. Jealousy is just the name of a person that you are, one of a multitude of persons that you are. Almost every word I would say every word in the dictionary has a person behind it. That's only the person that speaks of that word and knows the definition behind that word. And it's a unique thing for me, I would say I don't really know how to do it consciously, and I have been, I don't know, frustrated is not the word. See how when I just start talking about it, I say words and then there's a correction that comes, and the corrector of what I just said actually speaks. You just heard it. When I said, well, actually that's not it. That's another soul, living soul within me, speaking back to what I just said. And it prompts the right soul that has a Lord. Every soul has a Lord. What is a Lord? A Lord is nothing more than a knowledge that guides you and leads you in a particular area of your life. What is a God? A God is a word. A word like, if, and, or but. Hello, good morning. Those are all words. We're so embedded in this thing that the word is the scripture and the Bible and all that stuff. And so we overlook the common fact that just words come out of our mouth. Just to buy a hot dog at a hot dog stand. God speaks. God speaks. God is just the name of your speaking ability. If you look up God in the Greek, when you go to, John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God and was with God. In the beginning was Word. Nothing was made that was made without the Word, and all that. If you look up that word God, it is defined by a couple of very simple words: speech and speaking. So you just order a hot dog. God is speaking. So Paul said there are many lords and many gods. A lord is nothing more than a knowledge that leads and guides you. And God takes that knowledge and converts it into spoken words out of your mouth. If you're a carpenter, you know how to properly sand wood. You know how to start with a rough, maybe an 80 grit sandpaper to really knock down all the big stuff. And then you go to a 220 to smooth out all the deep scratches from the low grade sandpaper, the 80 grit. And so then you go to a finer grain of sandpaper, 220. And then that, though it really smooths it out, still leaves microscopic scratches, deep scratches in the wood. So now we're going to go to a 440. We're going to double the fineness, the smoothness of the sandpaper to smooth out those scratches. When you start doing auto body paint, you go through like 4 or 5 series of sanding to the point you go from a 220 down to a 2500 grit sandpaper, which is not sanding anymore, it's polishing. So you have a knowledge that knows all that about sandpaper if you're a carpenter. But that that knowledge has no need to speak unless the topic of sanding wood comes up, or sanding paint, or finishing paint, whatever you're doing, finishing a table with lacquer. And you'll need these sandpapers. But that Lord never speaks until the topic comes up, and then boom, that knowledge wants to come to your tongue or come to the altar and be expressed, so that it teaches not only all of the ears and all of the souls within you, but all of the ears and all of the souls in the person you're speaking to. So I'm going to talk about the only begotten Son. So now that we're talking about definitions, I can say this. A son is an understanding that comes by what you speak. Your mind is the woman. Your mind is like a woman, that field of maneuvers and things that you go through. When you hear something and then your mind deduces something, it produces a new understanding of that thing, gives birth to a new what? A new child or a new son. Job, the name Job is the name of an understanding that Adam had. It says Job was the son of God. Job was and the viewpoint that Job expressed, and all of that knowledge that comes from the story of Job, was an understanding in Adam that had come by things that Adam said. Adam clearly, or rather God in Adam, the voice of this man, spoke and said things that caused himself troubles inside, but he was blind to the source of why he was troubled. Can you believe it? That the speech and speaking, the power in the universe that creates the language that we walk with and that is our life, that power that we have that is us doesn't understand itself. That power that we have doesn't understand itself. Can you believe that God is in in a place. Speech and speaking is so alive and is so powerful, and yet is coming to a revelation of who and what speech and speaking is. The whole Bible shows the picture of all the different voices within you and all the different lords. Remember, Paul said there are many lords, there are many gods. A lot of words that speak a lot of different things, that express a lot of different knowledge. More importantly and specifically, knowledge about yourself or your judgments of yourself. Look at Bildad, Eliphaz, and Zophar. Those are the three friends of who? Job. And Job was a son of God also. All four of those were sons of God. They were understandings that came forth, that were given birth in the mind or the womb or the mother of all the living that mankind was going to do inside of themselves. Everything that Bildad had expressed to Job speaks of a judgment or an opinion that had been spoken before. It's the only reason that those judgments and opinions that Bildad had were alive and kicking and speaking. They were understandings that were brought by things that Adam had said of himself. And they are alive and active. And they're on the inside of you too. You can't escape it. The same for Eliphaz. He had sort of the same viewpoints, but some other points to add. It's another soul on the inside of Adam with a voice. And Zophar, the same thing. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, they're all conversing with Job. And if you notice, they're all in conflict over one subject, whether Job is right or wrong, whether he's righteous or unrighteous, whether he's wrong for being proud or not humble enough. And so mankind says, I'm good and I'm righteous and I'm happy. And then they have this other side that says, I'm not good and I'm not happy. And they're in conflict inside and talking together inside. And they all have God power. They are all kings. So they all want to be prominent on the tongue, on your tongue, on the tongue of Adam or man, and a human. But that's just a picture right there of the many souls. The Bible is showing you all the souls and the different voices and the viewpoints that are, to say they're at war is kind of strong, but they're discussing it inside. And the only way for you to come to a resolution between Job or his three friends is to allow each of those individuals to express fully from your tongue so you can hear it. And then hopefully you're to the point where you've resurrected a Jesus who says, not only are all these things, these viewpoints, having a place for us to be balanced, because we have to have two sides to balance, on the scales. If we have that voice of Jesus, that one, the voice of Jesus, just like the voice of Job or Eldad or Zophar, just another voice amongst many voices. That's a very special voice. If the voice of Jesus is resurrected and is King of the Jews and King of the Gentiles, ruling and reigning over both kingdoms of all that has been said, he's going to point out that the fact that what's important is not whether he's right or wrong, but that right and wrong are produced by the same God or the same speech and speaking. The same thing, the same use of our own words and voice produces the bad judgments we have about ourselves, produces the good judgments about ourselves. And so what we should find hope for and have joy in is that it proves the immense and incredible, deeply detailed power of what comes out of our mouth in the form of words. And so therefore it glorifies God, and God is just simply your speech and speaking. So marvel at the extremes alive on the inside of you, and marvel so that you know in the future to heed your words, that they may produce a balanced view of yourself in your own eyes. That's why you have two eyes, so you can see from two angles, two ears, so you can hear from left and right. And realize that all of these things are produced by the same source. We have one God and Father of us all. the word and the words we speak. Father, understandings, or new children, understandings about ourselves. A son is an understanding that you have it because you heard something spoken. I didn't know about sandpaper until somebody said something to me about sandpaper. I received that knowledge from the spoken word from somebody else. My mind deduced it, analyzed it, and decided on standing on a definition and an understanding within me that I would operate from that point forward. It gave that spoken word that I heard taught every ear within me about the proper ways of sanding wood. And it gave birth to a son, what that Bible book calls a son. But what we know now is it's simply the understanding that we received, that the light bulb went on when we spoke something or when somebody else spoke something around us that every ear within us heard. So when you hear God gave up his only begotten son, what you're really saying is that Adam or man or you came to a point where you gave up the only understanding that you had of yourself. You had an understanding, you had a son, and you thought it was just one son. You called it your only. You just thought you had one understanding of who you were, that you were just one person, that there was only one of you within you that was you. But it's not true. There are many of you that are within you that are you. How many? Well, in the big picture, only two. Us two. How can two walk together unless they agree? So it's interesting that all through the Bible, you see these stories of two sons, Cain and Abel, Jacob and Esau. Cut the baby in two. The two ladies are fighting over one baby. And the judge says, cut the baby in two then. Remember that story? Mary and Martha. There's two different minds going on within you. That's why you have conflicts in your thought and thinking. Weren't Martha and Mary very different? So we have all these twos. All the creatures came into the ark, 2 by 2. But in the big crescendo, in the big ending of the Bible book, the big salvation of these two are all, the Jew and the Gentile, two factions, heaven and earth. We see the sacrifice of one son, or we see the sacrifice of one understanding that we have of ourselves, because we have to readjust it. Because we're learning now, there's not just one, there's two. But we have to sacrifice one. What does that mean? Does that mean we have to sacrifice the older son so that the young one can live? Well, wait a minute. Nobody wants to kill one of the sons or one of our children. We wouldn't want to kill one of our children so that the other could do something better. So it's not about physical people that we're talking about sacrificing or putting to death. We're talking about sons or understandings of ourselves that must be sacrificed. We must give them up so that we can go on now. For God gave us his only begotten son, his only begotten understanding. Begotten means he came upon it and conceived it and developed it and gave it life. So we have to take an understanding that we gave life to that is a judgment about ourselves. We have to give this understanding or perception that we have about ourselves as being one person and not many persons speaking out of one mouth. Oh yeah, there are multitudes of crowds of multitudes of lords, thoughts and opinions and judgments more than anything within you that are each individual and specific and carry their own message, that want to speak from the one mouth that you have. They want to come to one altar, one tongue. And they fight as to who is ruling and reigning on that tongue. So speech and speaking, and the power and the God that speech and speaking is in our lives from us to us, must give up an understanding that that same speech and speaking, or words that were spoken by us and those before us, we must give up the understanding that we came to after we heard ourselves say things about ourselves. And this has gone on through your lineage before you, your ancestors. We must give up an understanding, our only understanding that we contrived. We must give it up. We must give up the understanding that we are one thing, and so that we can allow ourselves and accept within ourselves that we are two bodies, and each of those bodies has multitudes of individual pieces of knowledge that all want to be spoken and be heard to communicate as God to all of the other voices and ears within us. It's been a great challenge to express this heretofore, and I will continue on seeking a way and coming to an understanding to the point that I can say it in some of the most simplistic terms so even a child could understand immediately what I'm talking about. And I will come to this. Why? All of the recordings of me that you have heard, all of that word and those understandings, they bring forth other understandings from within us. Like a train car, one car pulls another. And the momentum of one car adds to the momentum of the car behind it. And that adds momentum to the car behind it. In NASCAR, 3 cars, bumper to bumper, pushing each other down the racetrack, drafting that way, have more speed and power and can break the pressure and the compression of the wind that they're pushing around, can break it easier than a single car. So all these things that you've heard me say on recordings, they were from understandings or children or understandings of these things that we speak of that have been brought forth by things I said before. And now that I said those things in recordings 5 years ago, I discard those recordings now. Can't even listen to them. Why? They're so infantile compared to what has been brought forth now after one understanding teaches another understanding that teaches another understanding, to the point my understanding has totally changed and become a totally different thing. But all those previous sons or understandings that I gave birth to by teaching this stuff in myself, I would not be where I am today if I had not spoken them. But I cannot listen to them from 5 years ago, the word from those understandings or those children, those sons of God speaking from me. I can't listen to them because there's nothing in them. All I'm doing is rereading chapter 1 of the textbook over and over. But how much more we know once we get to the end of the book, chapter 10, or whatever it is, chapter 25, whatever. We know so much more in chapter 25, it does us no good to go back and reread chapter 1 again. See what I'm saying? But I'm only saying things now to better find the most clearer words to express for that Lord within me that knows this knowledge, to find the right words or gods to come off my lips, come out of this one mouth, that you could hear them and receive it as the Word of God, that the same voices that carry this message within you could be spurred back to life and given hope that they can now agree with it and express it through your own mouth. It's a beautiful thing if you can understand it. And these lords, before they come to God and are converted into words that are spoken from you, they all talk. There are governments within you. That's why you hear arguments within you. That's why one day you think, I'm not going to bother with doing a certain thing that I was planning on doing. And then the next day you're like, you know what? I am going to do that. That's because all those voices and all those souls within you, they all have a will. And what is their will? To bring forth something spoken from your mouth, that all the ears within you would hear it and agree, and that all together you would participate in the making of a table or the washing of the car or the doing of your income tax books or whatever it is. That's why you have conflicts within your mind. You have two minds. even physically, you have two lobes of the brain. And scientists tell you one side is creative and the other is, analytical or whatever it is. I think the physical brain is nothing more than a relay system of electronic pulses that are stimulated by what you say. Thinking doesn't come from the flesh and blood in your brain, the organ known as the brain. Everything within you is stimulated by what you say or don't say. That whole Bible is an incredible picture of an individual who has to come to terms with himself and the reality of himself. I have gone through this. Haven't you gone through this? Age does it to you. You'll actually come to a day where your children will say, I find myself hanging out around people that are just, all they want to do is party all the time. I'm X amount of years old. I'm ready to have purpose in my life and not spend it playing in my head and, buckle down and get involved in a career and, go to nicer restaurants and lounges for dinner and entertainment, not the corner bar where they're selling speed all the time. They get to the point where they want to go on and they have to recognize who they're not. Look, when I was, 19 years old, I like to get high and go to concerts. All right, so when you're 41 years old, that's not of an interest to you so much. You have come to terms with yourself. In about 1986, I went through a severe life change on the inside of me that would set the path and the course for the rest of my life. And I had a revelation that the truth would put me with people I should be with and immediately separate me from people I should not be with, based on the truth. More importantly, I wanted peace inside, and I didn't know what I was going through. I didn't know that it would lead to all of the revelation that you're hearing even to this day in this particular recording you're listening to. But I sought about to make a list of things that were, not me. I'm supposed to send Christmas gifts every year and Christmas cards. I'm supposed to play along and wear a tacky red and green Christmas sweater with reindeer and snowmen on it. And I'm supposed to play along with baby Jesus and all that. And the fact is I didn't care about Christmas. I didn't have bad experiences. I had great experiences with Christmas growing up. So no, it's not because I'm bitter. Bitter, table of one. It's not that at all. I just was unhappy. I was unhappy. I was really not happy. I was very confused. I was frustrated in life to the point that I had to do radical things. So I made a list of all the things that I didn't want to participate in that I was supposed to, because if I did and I did it well, people would accept me and like me. And so I just quit doing stuff that I knew wasn't me, that I didn't have personally any interest, didn't care if I ever did it again. Matter of fact, would be happy if I never did it again. And one of those things was going through the whole Christmas holiday, stuff that all that is. Gift giving and Santa Claus and all. I didn't care. I really didn't care. So I gave it up. It upset a lot of people around me. They were very offended. I didn't tell them they were wrong. I didn't say it was wrong. I said, I'm not doing that anymore. Buy me a gift if you want to. I will not be buying gifts. Just know it. I don't do that anymore. And if you don't buy me a gift because I don't buy you a gift, I'm fine with that, because I'm happy for all of this to go away. Why? I stressed it so deeply. Year after year after year in my life. I was just 26 years old. That's how big that stupid thing was in my life. That getting that off my shoulders was a huge relief, because I didn't have any money and I was putting things on a credit card, impressive gifts. And then the next Christmas would roll around. I hadn't even paid off the credit card from the year before. And here I was throwing another $600 or $700 onto it. Christmas was like a hamster on a wheel. And I wanted to get off the hamster wheel. And I did. And I learned how it shifted and changed all the relationships around me if I didn't participate in things and didn't have a bitterness about them. You go ahead. I used to tell people, I don't do Christmas, but if you want to invite me to your Santa Claus Christmas party, I'll wear a little Santa Claus hat and drink the shit out of your Merlot. I'll come to your party. I'm not interested in all this other stuff. I don't participate. Not buying gifts. I don't decorate. But hey, decorations are fun to look at. It's fun to look at a house all decorated up and Christmas lights. So see, it's not about a bitterness about Christmas. It's just about, I don't want to participate in it or be obligated or controlled by it. And so that was the truth. And it separated me from people. It also separated me inside from somebody who was not interested in those things and giving that place validity and a place to rule and reign in my life. Where the voice, I don't do Christmas, was king. And it taught all of the other voices and souls within me that have these voices. It taught when I said, I don't do Christmas, and I'm not bitter about it, it's not me. All the other souls within me that have ears heard that word out of my mouth, and they know everything out of my mouth as God. And they were comforted that they weren't obligated to express, positive things about the fantasy world called man's Christmas, that they didn't have to do that anymore, and I was comforted by the truth. And yet it separated me from certain aspects of relationships, certainly, but some total relationships with people around me, because I was honest with myself and I let who I really was shine, and it caused a separation. Right? It says the word is powerful. Able to what? Separate. But you don't separate anything from you. You don't get rid of anything through the separation. You divide it into two things. You separate one thing from another so you can see both sides clearly. So you can what? Rule and govern these two different things. One thing will hide within another thing within you. Heads up. What you say will separate and will take the confusion out of things. Things need to be separated. You need to leave the thought that you are one thing and get into the clear understanding of the two separate things that you are. And the two separate things that you are, these two bodies, so to speak, of knowledge and viewpoint and judgment, they're very different. Heaven judges things through a very different set of glasses and lenses than earth. And earth, as a judgment and a viewpoint, and all the souls of earth within you see you very different than all of the souls that identify themselves as the heaven crowd or the Jew. Earth is the Gentile. So to get to the point where you realize you cannot get rid of the I'm a good person, I like me side of you. You cannot get rid of the I'm not a good person, I don't like me side of you. And wake up, sugar pie. Both of those are in every human being walking this earth. Those are the core foundations. Am I good? Am I evil? Am I right? Am I wrong? It is all about judgment. And words from your mouth, speech and speaking, which is God, we've talked about that, is the final judge. So both sides of you, the one that thinks you're great and the one that thinks you're not great, they are influenced by the things that come out of your mouth. Because they recognize those ears within you in both of those bodies, Jew, Gentile, heaven and earth, good, bad. They recognize what you say is God. But you cannot give full validity to the side that you don't like, which is your struggle in accepting everything that you are and realizing it's not going away. You have to make peace with it. Until you can see the two sides that you are, you can't allow both sides clearly individually separated from the other to speak and to express themselves. And you have to overcome that thing where that I'm hot and I'm great, I'm the cat's meow, I'm the shit, I'm smart, I'm smarter than others. all the voicings of that stuff that are within you that you have to govern so other people don't think poorly of you when you allow those things to come to your tongue. If you don't allow them to come to your tongue, you bring death to that side of you. You bring hell. You condemn those voices and those souls that actually want to say that. And if you look at it right, they're actually saying the truth. You condemn them to a hell, and you create hell for them. They have to have their own voice through your mouth. All that proud, arrogant language has to be given a platform to speak, or you will have torment. Just like you have to give validity and see this whole other separate side in a purity, that all the negative things that you think and want to say about yourself, you have to allow them to speak and be true, because they are true, because they are judgments that have come that are glorifying God. You have those judgments because you said things, and therefore you're stuck with the judgments that you have. But you cannot learn to allow both sides of you to speak through one mouth and share that altar and share that tongue, Jew and Gentile, in the same temple. If you're going to be one, and both will never go away and are true, both sides, you'll have to pick one side. And then for your own comfort, you'll have to believe that's all that's really you, and anything outside of that side that you chose to identify with, everything else doesn't exist, or if it does, it must be cast out and thrown away. And that's why you have a problem. Because both sides are there, heaven and earth, you might as well let them be. And both need to be heard. They both must be heard because they both represent two extremes, super positive and super negative. And when you allow both of them to speak, then the woman hears from both voicings, the positive about you and the negative about you, and gives birth to a single son that now walks with the knowledge of the two as one. But first we have to sacrifice or give up the son, and a son is an understanding. Look, we got to give up the understanding of ourselves that we're just good, because we're not. We are also bad. But for so long, speech and speaking did not want to allow the bad stuff to be used by them. He didn't want the negative to be used by the power that he was. Speech and speaking, or God, is just another one of the souls or individuals that you are, that rules and reigns. He's the gatekeeper. This power of speech and speaking, the ability to have language and talk. You know, why don't cows and dogs talk? It's really easy when you understand the truth. They don't talk because they are only in existence because they represent a nature of an animal that can be produced within you as a person by what you say. Dogs bite you. Your words bite you. Dogs lap up water. Words you speak lap up water for you. Dogs defecate on the ground in front of you, hiding it not. A dog defecating on the ground is a picture to teach you that words that you use can be like a dog defecating on the ground within you. That's the power of those words. It glorifies God. I mean, it's ridiculous. You'll laugh. You'll think I'm being snarky. I'm not. A dog defecating on the ground, and when you look at that and observe that in real life, is a picture of what your own words can do to you on the ground within you. So there's no reason for the dog to talk. The dog is an understanding that we must come to that glorifies the part of what makes up the totality of all of the power and life found in the spoken word, speech and speaking from your mouth. I made somebody real angry one time. He was a religious sod, and we were friends, and we knew we had something, but what we had was very different. What he had was only part of the program, and he didn't understand the source of the revelation that he had. See, I understand the source of the revelation I have comes from all the things that I've said about this revelation, which led to more knowledge, or more sons being born, which produced more knowledge within me, or more lords, which produced more voicings that wanted to be spoken out of me, gods. For there are many lords and many gods. There are many things you know, and these things want to speak out of you. So I made this preacher in this big city really angry one time because I said, you're the words that you use teach other souls within you the words and the language that they need to use so that they can be spoken from your tongue. One word teaches another. One thing you say from an understanding that you have, from a knowledge from a Lord that's given the power of God or speech and speaking, when you speak it, you speak other lords within you, how to convert what they know into a language or words that will truly express what that Lord wants to say. And that Lord is found within a soul, which is alive, which was also produced by something you said before. It's a circle pattern kind of. So I used the example with this preacher. How about this? How about you got a case of water bottles like you buy at the store, and they're all wrapped in that thick, heavy plastic. You grab the plastic as a handle, and you carry out a case of plastic water bottles. Well, what if it was true that one bottle within those 12 bottles in that case of water bottles starts talking to the other bottles about how they can get out of this plastic case on their own? Hey, we're stuck in this plastic case. And he teaches them what to say so that when they say it, the plastic tears in front of them and they can jump out of the plastic casement. And he thought that was such a big insult to Jesus to compare him to a simple water bottle. I thought, why are you hung up on all that? Why are you hung up on the analogy? Trying to get you to see a concept. But he was so religious. Because I said, Jesus is just one water bottle, one voice from a soul within you that's very special and specific. The only one like that voice is called Jesus. And we've all killed Jesus. And we need Jesus because Jesus is the only voice within us that will come to the altar and say things that accept heaven and earth. Say things that bless the positive and the negative. Jesus never left his wingman. He remained a faithful, legal, law-abiding Jew, while at the same time he endorsed and sat with and spoke with and had relationship with the Gentile and found nothing wrong with their Gentile ways. Never scorned them for not washing 52 times before they made ham and eggs and kept the eggs on a separate plate. Jesus is just the one voice from the one soul in the midst of us, within us, who is part of the greater voice that said, let us make man in our image. And Jesus was the one voice on the heaven side that knew the truth, that was willing to go into the earth side and teach them how to speak so that they could be heard. And he knew the only way for you to speak out of man and be heard is to say who and what you are, and then to bless it. And to say, and I like that about me, and acknowledge and embrace that it is what? Truth about you. The negative side of you is truth. So a son of God, an understanding is brought forth because of something that was said. Something that was said by Adam or man continually amplified the fact that I am one person. And people are different. They'll lean from I'm the really super great right person all the time. And then you have the people that are always depressed and always condemning themselves and always feeling guilty all the time. All right, so the people that have the I'm great and I'm smart, I know God and he knows I'm right. All these people have to give up the fact that that's all that they are. They have to sacrifice that one understanding that they are one side only. They have to slay their only begotten understanding. They haven't given birth to the understanding that they are heaven and earth yet. But before they can accept earth, they have to give up the understanding that they are only heaven, that they're only good. And that now they have to accept all the bad stuff. They have to come to terms with themselves. So mankind with God are words coming out of his mouth, always talked about himself and always related to others. with the terms that he was heaven, good, correct, and everything. But he knew the truth. The Word knew the truth, that there were all these other voicings that wanted to express that they were also negative. But man had only amplified one side of himself and struggled to get rid of the other side. But he had one understanding, he had one son. Remember, a son is an understanding of you, that you have about you. From you, you get this understanding from you. And how you talk about yourself to yourself, and how you talk to yourself, and what you express even subtly to others. You have to sacrifice, you have to give up your only son, your only understanding of you, so that you can come to what? A new understanding that there are both sides, two sides of you. And you come to the beauty that you don't know the negative side unless you know the positive side. And when you know negative and positive, you're balanced. It's real simple. Scales of judgment. You got scales. They don't have 3 bowls to check weight. They have 2 trays or 2 bowls. And you compare weights and decide what's heavier. You put a certain amount of weight on one side that represents a certain amount of money in gold. And you put the weight over on the one side and you put the gold on the other, and you keep putting the gold coins in until the weight evens out. That's how you know how much that gold is valued at. Anyway, so Adam began to change his speech and speaking. He began to allow a different God or a different word or a different message that came from a different Lord, that came from a soul within him, had to allow that to start to be exercised and to be spoken and to be lavished upon and adored and resurrected within him. At the end of the book of Genesis, I don't know, chapter 28 or 26, something like that. Nobody ever preaches on it. I've spoken about it many times because I'm like, there it is. There was a river of life. The river of life is the flow of words from your mouth, and specifically, more importantly, all of the wordings and speech and speaking that comes forth from your tongue that speaks of you, that reflects you. And it said, there's the river of life, and on one side of the river was a tree. And that tree, the tree was a tree of life. And that tree just represents the lineage, like a family tree, the lineage of all the things spoken that produce that attitude that you have about you, that you're great and wonderful and smart and beautiful and glorious. The truth is, we all have that, and we allow it too much, or we don't allow it at all. We put it to death. But anyway, that's one tree of life. That's one judgment we have of each other. And then he said, I saw on the other side of the river of life, on the flow of our words, was another tree of life. Well, there's your earth. And in the midst of the river, on a throne, was another tree of life. And that is the knowledge, or the Lord, the King, that rules and reigns the 2 kingdoms, heaven and earth, governs them to make sure they both have equity and can be spoken and can be seen as a product of the river of life, or a product of everything that's been said before you in your physical lineage and everything that you say now within you forth. For God gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth on him should not perish, but have everlasting life. To give up your only begotten Son, the only understanding you have of yourself, that you're one side of the universe and you want to get rid of the other side, you have to give up that understanding, that one Son that you have. You have many sons. Job is a son of God. People talk about Jesus was the only Son of God. They can't understand why it says Job was the Son of God. Because there are many sons, many lords, many gods. We are a many-membered body, and there's just one voice like Jesus. He's the only voice that has the Lord within him, or the knowledge that, when expressed, governs the other 2 trees on either side of the flow of words that comes out of the midst of us. To see both sides of you, you have to give up the understanding, or you have to give up the son, that you're just one aspect of you and not two, having two. You have to give up that son, that understanding. I give it up now. I'm two things. And when I have troubles and struggles, I realize that I'm struggling with myself because I haven't accepted something about myself. And I can quit blaming others for my hardships. Mankind, or Adam, gave up the constant conversation that he was one thing or another. That's all that means. He gave it up. And started to allow both sides of him to speak from his mouth. And for one side to come to the tongue and say, I'm like this and I'm like that. Whatever, we're talking about. I talk too much, or I think nobody likes me. Each individual opinion or thought is a soul, has a voice, is of God, carries a Lord, carries a knowledge, and we have to let all these things be expressed through us. So when you're having troubles and hardships, you need to sit down and let the fearful side speak out loud. And who are you talking to? The other side of you. And you really make a connection. When you have this revelation, you do this. And then you let that other side speak. And you watch. Once both sides get out and express their point, watch, a third voice will arise and talk to those two voices and govern them, acknowledging both of them. I am this and I am that. And I am both at the same time. And I'm having this conflict because, certain situation I'm in is spurning souls within me to speak. They don't like it. And this is a process you go through, talking to yourself. I find it interesting that mankind scoffs at people that talk to themselves as crazy and lunatic. And all that is the one side. They haven't given up their only begotten son. They don't think you can talk to yourself and it matter and be anything but lunacy. And that's because they haven't given up their only begotten son, their only begotten understanding of themselves. They don't know that they're two within you and that they should be talking out loud through your tongue so your ears within you can hear it. And through this you come to wisdom. If you see both sides, you fully understand something.
Share the podcast from abeljosephson.com.